Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and it is such a treat to be here today. Today, we're in for a treat with a magical chat with Charles Eisenstein. Charles, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. What an enthusiastic opening.
It may have been a bit of a spanner, right? Because it's like, it's super chilled, welcome, how you going? And then it's like, all right, let's go, bang.
Yeah, well, it's not an act entirely. You were super friendly before we started recording too.
It definitely shifts it up a gear as well. So, hey, for those tuning into Charles for the first time, Charles Eisenstein, public speaker, gift economy advocate, and, researching you in the background, this was something that I'm, to be honest, humbly surprised that I've never really dived deeper into this before. He's the author of several books, including The Ascent of Humanity, Sacred Economics, and The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible, and Climate, a New Story. So there's so much in here, and there are so many places that we could start and go. But one of the key questions I've got, which I'm just going to open with that, it's like, trying to be a better comedian, like finish with your punchy line. Come out and give the last joke first. So I'm going to try and do that today, which is, hey, Charles, a lot of you are humans, and, trying to, like, how we live with the world and how we interact, and, just being better humans fundamentally. But then a lot of your work is centered around money as well, and like the economy. So why was it for you, those two key nexus, like those, because like there's my being, and then there's the piece of me that goes to work and does what I need to do. And I've obviously got my own ideas around this, but tell us a little bit about why your interest became the human being and how they make money.
Yeah, that's been one of the through lines of my work for a long time, since probably almost 20 years, simply because any question that you ask about human society and the way we are doesn't stray very far from money. When you ask, like, how does the world work? It kind of revolves around money. Or how do I, like, just how often do we operate in terms of what can I afford to do? What do I have to do? So much of it, and the whole survival orientation, is all wrapped up in money. So I thought that to understand, not only to understand society, but also to understand the human being and myself, I wanted to understand money better, especially because money, like this whole divide between materiality and spirituality, is a big part of the problem. And if we want to unify those two, then money is maybe like the crux of this unification. Because if there's anything harder to bring into the sacred realm, it would be money.
I definitely feels like that with the collective way we approach it, right? Sorry, I interrupted. Please continue.
No, it's fine. Let me just pick up where I was going with that.
The material and spirituality.
Yeah. So money so often seems to like pull me back into a person that I no longer want to be. And it seems to bring out my worst impulses. So I want to look at that, because I want to become who I can be. I mean, this is what your show is about. Is money, what role does money play in your evolution? What self do you inhabit? What story of the world do you inhabit when you're really immersed in the money world? I mean, it's all about maximizing self-interest. It's about security. It's about counting things. It's about cost-benefit analyses, accounting. It's not, you can use money in an expansive, generous way, but the culture of money, and I would even say the design of money in our current system, pulls us back into the story of separation. So that was the unifying factor. I wrote a book called Sacred Economics that was mostly about the systemic level, actually, but also about the psychological level, because our psychology is it's not entirely dictated by this system that we're in, but it's heavily influenced by the system that we're in. And then the system, in turn, is built on the psychology.
Yeah, it's like there's an ontology in there.
Yeah, like it's a self-reinforcing pattern. And so how do we break out of that pattern?
That's a great question. Can you help me answer that?
I mean, anytime you ask, how do we do anything? It's always, well, what do you mean? Do you mean, how do I do it? You and me? Or how, like, the abstract we of society and the government should do this and people should do that?
Mm,
Um, the most relevant, unless like we're a bunch of economics geeks, in which case we could have a different conversation, but
mm,
it often comes back to myself. And for example, how do I run a business? When I'm putting out uh, writing and whatever videos, things like that, podcasts,
mm,
um, that I didn't sit down and say, okay, what's the best way to make money? I know I'll write some things. Like, my purpose is because I had something that was important for me to say. I had a
right.
service I wanted to offer to the world. You could say I had a gift.
Mm,
So why would I want to limit the reception of that gift by putting it behind a paywall? Like, that is counter to my basic motivation.
mm,
And like all of us, we all have the pressure to make a living. So we're torn in two by the pressure of money. We so want to give, and we live in a system that doesn't seem to reward the altruistic gift, but says, no, you better find some way to monetize this.
mm.
And this is the dilemma. I don't I don't have an easy answer to the dilemma, but I'd like to recognize that dilemma, and then I can share how I've engaged that dilemma through gift economics. But
Yeah.
I'm not offering that as the answer either.
Mm. Amazing. I love what you're sharing there about the actual awareness is kind of key for us to then have a conversation to sort of see where we need to go. And I think it's interesting, just the way you describe that. That's the first time I've heard it described as paywall, which is really a very it's a very neat metaphor in understanding that actually, yeah, because then it's like, well, in order to monetize the gift, which is conversation, there is a paywall, right? And in my world that looks like, come and speak as a speaker. And it's like, yep, but what's, I'd love speaking. I have done it for free, you know. But then, it's like if the speaking engagement brings me $15,000, and that's great because that can now help me interface with all the other paywalls when I go to Safeway and all the Coles and all that to actually buy the goods that I need. They're all behind the paywall as well. So very interesting. I love that terminology that you've used. And so, when we come to the gift economy, then what does that? And I know you just prefacing that you said that this is a potential different direction rather than the solution per se. But what does the gift economy look like?
Oh, I mean, it can look many different ways. It comes from a basic impulse or the basic understanding that I'm offering this as a gift. And if it's precious to me, then any amount that I charge is going to be too little because this is infinitely valuable. It's sacred. So I don't want to devalue it by putting a price on it. And any amount I charge is also too much because
Yeah.
I don't want it behind a paywall. I'm here on earth to give this. So what do you do when any price is too little and too much? You can't set a price. So I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I'll let the user determine the price. I do that for online courses, and that price could be zero. It could be anything you want. But I say, um, be guided by your feeling of what is right and good and fair and clear, the right gift that makes you feel good to give it.
Mm.
And it could be zero. And so now it takes the pressure off me to provide value, and it allows generosity to come in, and it allows me to be funded without having to compel people and be like, no, 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 I'm not going to give it to you unless you give me something. That's not the kind of energy I want. I
Yeah.
want it to
Right.
be open and flowing. And so that's one way to do it. And it works really well with digital products because
Mm.
it actually doesn't cost me anything or not very much to for someone to download another copy.
Mm.
If you're
Yeah.
talking about material things, that's a little different. If I'm talking about being a public speaker and I have to travel and stuff like that, then um, I often actually use a gift model for that too.
Mm.
But if it's like a more mainstream conference or something like that, and they pay their speakers, I'm happy to honor and value my work by receiving an honorarium that's comparable to the other top-notch speakers. So, yeah, it's not, I'm not a gift economy Nazi, we are in an in-between time right now.
Yep.
Where the old ways don't work for a lot of people. Like, it doesn't feel good to festoon your site with advertising or to hold things behind a paywall. It doesn't feel good, and maybe it doesn't even work that well. But there isn't really a roadmap for doing this in a way that resonates with who we want to be in the world. So we have to explore and share with each other how we're doing it, and be generous with our judgments of those who are trying these experiments.
Yeah, it's really potent the way you're sharing what you're sharing, because oftentimes, I'm just reflecting back on my own experience and the few times that I got a sponsor for the podcast. Let's just give that as an example for advertising. I absolutely believed in what they were doing, so that was critical for me. It was Life Cycle mushrooms. They have these amazing tinctures full of reishi, chaga, all these really great Chinese.
Was that a paid product placement just now?
No, it actually isn't. It actually isn't. It would have been 12 months ago, but no, it's not. And it only lasted about 3 or 4 episodes, right? And the reason that is the case is what I was getting to. Is I just didn't like the energy of like people tuning into a conversation between Charles and Amrit, and then feeling like somehow Amrit had his interest in putting his hand in your pocket while you're just listening to a chat, right? Now, was it the best business move? No, it wasn't. It was like there's plenty of opportunity for everyone that's tuning in for me to go, hey, like this is really good for you, and by the way, check this out. And I kind of just on my intuition, and this is kind of you were talking about energy and what resonates, and this is really really cool space at the moment, because it just didn't feel right. I couldn't articulate to people why it didn't feel right. The people that that we were advertising for were great, and the work we're doing is great, and is there an alignment? Absolutely, but it just didn't feel right for me. And then I went on this journey and continued podcasting just without any sponsor or anything. And then it got to about 12 months in, and I was listening to one of the people that I respect a lot in society, and I'm obviously not going to name the names here. And I was listening to their podcast. They developed a podcast, and me and my wife were listening to it, and an ad came on midway through the podcast, and she was like, "Oh my God, I hate that." And I was just like, "Wait, what happened?" And she's like, "I absolutely hate that." And I was like, wow, I'm like, this is like coming full circle for me. I need you to explain what just happened, because I had the energy intention of like, I don't like it and I'm not going to do it. But why? Like, can you explain to me a little bit better? And she's like, because all of a sudden I was listening to one thing and then just something that is it completely took away from the energy of that person's integrity, because now it's, they're talking about something that has nothing to do in alignment with the values of what they were previously talking about. And it was a real mess. And it was really interesting just to get that feedback. And I think we don't stop to have the conversation that you and I are necessarily having in this space, which is, hey, like the energy around how you're showing up and transacting with the world has this, latent cord back to money on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of inauthentic, and it taps in the signal it sends out is, in the end, this is just about the money. And imagine if we were having a conversation, and in the middle of the conversation, I'm like, hey, Amrit, I'm going to tie my Nike sneakers. Just do it. Like, you would feel, you'd feel disrespected.
Yeah.
Like, am I a conversation partner, or am I a mark? Am I a chump? And people in this society, in any monetized society, really, most people, including myself, get jaded and inured to someone's always trying to take advantage of me. This is not our imaginations. It's called business. Not that everybody does business this way, but someone is, very often trying to take advantage of you. So we get like really cynical, and we start to live in a world where the truth is everybody's trying to take advantage of everybody else. So of course I've got to protect myself. I've got to guard me and mine. And then
Yeah, sorry.
Other people then experience me as doing the same thing. Oh,
Mm,
this guy's looking out for numero uno as well.
yeah.
So then we all get locked in a pattern that on a deep level, no one resonates with.
Mm,
It's like we're all stuck in a prison of our own making, everyone
yeah.
participating in it because everybody else is in it. And it's almost like this is one thing that I'm seeing with coronavirus, the possibility of dissolving the structures that um, define our routines and our
Mm,
habits temporarily, maybe, but all of a sudden we can see what lies outside of our narrow um, structures. And yeah,
mm. Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And I was hoping to have that conversation with you. One of the things I wanted to just before we get to where we're at in this exact
mhm,
today was you saying everyone's like you can feel that energy of like, hey, I'm trying to be taken advantage of, I'm trying to be taken advantage of, or that person's taking advantage of me. And fundamentally, the mechanism under there is, well, for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, feels like it's competition. It's that essence of competition that is woven into, like if I and you're taking advantage of someone because if you don't, someone else will. It's just really
mhm.
weird. Like, and for me, that spells competition. And I remember drilling down into, yeah, like I didn't really understand so much around um, the fact that we only really lend to those that will grow and return, and how that as a mechanism actually influences and cultivates competition. Like I never put those two things together until I started researching. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was one of the through lines in sacred economics, um, describing how money is created in our system through the lending of financial institutions to individuals, to corporations. And if you're a bank, of course, you're going to lend to somebody who's going to pay you back.
Mm,
Somebody, for example, who has a business plan that they're going to make even more money than you lent them so they
mm,
can pay you back with interest. So, what kind of business plan is that? Is that the business plan where you're going to protect an ecosystem?
mm.
No, because the banker will be like, how are you going to make money that way? I mean, I
Yes.
like the ecosystem too, but how are you going to pay me back?
Mm,
Or is it going to be the business plan where you pave it over and build a strip mall? Ah, now I see how you will pay me back. So, so basically, the system is geared toward endless growth
mm,
of the monetized realm simply because of the way money is created. And it also puts us into competition because at any given moment, there's always more debt than there is money.
mm. Yeah, that is hard to reconcile when you hear that out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's true.
I
Any,
know.
yeah, like the money is created through lending and there's always interest on it. $1 million is created and $1.5 million of debt is created. So
Mm,
we're always in competition with each other for never enough. And that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be competition in a moneyless world, but it means that we have artificial competition beyond what might be inherent in human nature.
but then
And we've
also the fact
extended
that,
the
sorry, yeah.
we,
Also
we've
the fact,
extended
oh,
the
sorry.
realm of competition. That's okay. I tend to go on a lot, but
No, you're good.
we've extended the realm of competition into virtually every facet of human life.
Mm,
So my work around economics isn't abolishing money.
mm,
That's not what I mean by gift economy, but it certainly means shrinking the realm of money and reclaiming some areas of life
mm.
for community, for the gift, for qualitative reciprocity, um, and not to have the market rule everything.
Mm, some return of sovereignty. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And where I was going to just ask you was, yeah, when there's consistent pullback, which is like you said, like if I've lent you $1 million, now I've generated debt in $1.5 million. There's a consistent like the waves trying to pull that money back in. Um, yeah, that essence of competition then leads us to being in an environment. And I know you said, there's the environment and there's us, but then sometimes it's hard to delineate between the two of scarcity, right? Because
Mhm.
that's a real interesting, yeah, when you're operating from what you're suggesting, in my opinion, is like to be the gift. It's like, okay, whole and centered from an abundant place. Like, how much do I value this thing? And where is my, like, everybody's level of abundance is at a different rate, and you can honor that and then pay what you feel to be in that
Hmm.
space, like in alignment, and you've really got to tune in, right? Um, but we don't really necessarily get the opportunity living in so much competition to tune into that, because it's just, there's this pullback. It's like, hey, I've got to make my repayments. I've got to make my repayments. I've got to make my repayments. And so there is that inherent scarcity, because everything I've got is plugged into, if I don't make that, this is going to disappear.
Yeah, bad things will happen to you if you don't make your payments.
Mm.
At least that's very much true. Not quite as true as our minds make it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very much the case. And so that is one of the biggest governing, like, uh, limits on people's capacity to follow their dreams. I mean,
Mm.
how many people feel enslaved? They use the word enslaved
Mm-hmm.
to their mortgages or to their rent payments or to their student loans.
Yeah.
You don't have that in New Zealand, but I don't think, do you?
No, but even in
So,
Australia, and
really?
even so,
Australia.
sure. And even though, but even it's even just the job. Like, I remember when I was trying to
Yeah.
disconnect from being in a corporate 9 to 5, it was like the word courage really dropped in. It was like just this moment in time. And when I looked at the word courage, as soon as I realized that courage wasn't fearlessness, because for 30 years I was walking around thinking they were the same thing, whole nother story. But when I dropped into that, I was like, oh, courage. And I was like, and as soon as that precipitated, courage is actually having fear and moving towards it anyway. I realized what my biggest fear was, which was, holy shit, like everything guiding me in this financial structure of like, yep, weekly paycheck and white picket fence and retirement, live life free. I was like, stepping outside of this is actually what is one of my biggest fears, because everything is just so well ordained and organized that what happens if I
Mhm.
don't honor that kind of energy? And that's just such a visceral fear. And you mentioned the word courage, and it's totally powerful. But it's even in that space of the 9 to 5 and the jobs that we live, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
Competition isn't a bad thing.
mm,
Its proper role is to uh, allow us to test our limits
mm,
and to show us where we're not as competent as we thought we were, maybe.
mm,
It can be a journey of self-revelation.
mm-hmm,
So I'm not anti-competition. It's just that it's pervaded realms of human interaction that it should not be competitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And so, because yeah, the healthiest place for competition being obviously competition with oneself, and then learning to collaborate with others through that increased ability that you develop through your self competition and that self realization journey that you go on. Mm.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's about competition with oneself. I mean, I think that
No?
that I don't know. Like I was an athlete in college. I learned a lot about myself through competition, but it was
Yeah.
in a contained arena.
Uh-huh.
Where yeah. Ultimately, I mean, ultimately, this gets down to basic philosophy. I would even
Mm.
call it the basic mythology of civilization.
Sure.
The question: Who am I? Who
Uh-huh.
are we?
Yeah.
And if we trust the narrative that um, modernity is built on, that says that we are separate individuals
Mm.
in a world of other, then competition is, of course, natural. Because if I'm separate from you, then more for me is less for you. We're
Mm.
in this external objective world,
Mm.
and my power, my well-being depends on being able to dominate all of those competitors out there,
Mm.
as well as the forces of nature that don't care about a human being. So as long as we accept that that is who I am, then our money system, our economy, uh, our entire society is built is baked into the cake. But
Right.
if we are in a story of interconnection, interdependence,
Yeah.
interbeing,
Being an emergent property of the universe. Yep.
yeah, then my well-being is intimately connected to the people around me and the beings around me.
Mm.
And which is in a gift culture, that's obvious.
Mm.
If you live in a culture where whoever has more than he needs gives it to those who need it, then you're going to be rooting for those who have amazing skills,
Mm.
because the better they do, the more gift there's going to be circulating. And you're going to feel sorry when the best hunter or the best musician or the best at something suffers a misfortune,
Mm.
because it's not like, now I can take his place. It's, wow, I'm going to be poorer now because this member of the circle of gift is incapacitated.
Mm.
And
Yep.
and this, yeah. And in the interconnected sense of self, the purpose of life is different. It's no longer to win security,
Mm.
but it is to give of our gifts.
Mm.
And I think that this basic knowledge is still with us. Like, even if you do win security, are you going to be satisfied?
Yeah, you still try to contribute, don't you?
Yeah, you still want to contribute. Yeah, no one wants to live the life they're paid to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. So I want to ask a question then, which is attempting to ground some of this in then. Like, we do have the current structure that we have. We have this potential for what is innately feeling like the way we want to operate. But we've learned to repress that and embed ourselves in the world and try and make what we need to do what we need to do, and make of ourselves what we need to make of ourselves in order to facilitate that. In there, how do we then is it a matter of trying to integrate the two, like how like maybe an example from your own world? Like, I know you said you've got your digital products and you've made it, hey, like you place the value on that, but how does someone listening in, how do we integrate a new way of interacting with money, interacting with our life and infrastructure? How do we actually go about doing something like that when it seems like, I'm going to use the word neurosis, pardon me, but the neurosis is collective?
Yeah. I don't think that there's a general formula for how to do that.
Hmm.
I think that the skillful means necessary to take the next step, this is not an all or nothing thing. It's
Hmm.
about what's the natural next step
Yep.
toward the future that's calling me,
Hmm.
and toward the future that's calling all of us. Like, it's as if we can sense that future on the horizon, and that
Hmm.
there's a path that goes to it. And there's many, many other paths converging on the present, each of them leading to a different future. We can see the future, like we have these moments of our lives that show us what's possible.
Hmm.
And it might just be a fleeting experience, an encounter where we witnessed true generosity, maybe, or true cooperation, or the magnificence of our own gifts, and have that feeling, yeah, this is what I'm here to do.
Hmm.
And then, and a world could be built on this. And then maybe it passes, and you're back to normal. But
Hmm.
it didn't feel like a trick of the universe, um, to temporarily comfort you from the grim reality that we're in. But it felt like an outreach from the future to the present. So, like, we see these destinations, we see how beautiful life in the world could be,
Hmm.
and then the rational mind said, there's no way to get there.
Right.
There's It's impossible
Yeah.
for life to be that good and the world to be that beautiful.
Because even as
But
you're yeah, sorry.
all I want to say is that we don't need to know. We don't need to map the entire path there. All we need to do is
Hmm.
to recognize the next step. And recognizing the next step comes from new information that
Uh-huh.
reveals to us how like these experiences, or maybe even this conversation that awakens something that recognizes that it's true. And just recognizing it is a reprogramming.
Hmm.
And then maybe you'll um, see an opportunity that you wouldn't have seen, because you know yourself as a being of gift,
Hmm.
and you can feel the truth of that. And so when the opportunity comes up, it's like, oh yeah, I think I'll do that.
Yeah, I love that. And that's yeah, I worked with Eckhart Tolle for 6 months, and it was almost painful to continuously have him bring me back to the awareness is the shift. The awareness is the shift. The shift has already happened. Just come back to your awareness. It's just a matter of you now catching up and integrating that, but it's in the present moment. The shift is the awareness. So just be aware. So I hear that being echoed in this sentiment here, which is, yeah, it's really deep if you continue to ride that. What I was going to say before was, sorry, I keep trying to interrupt you. My apologies. I think there's a bit of a lag in the connection. So with it like finding a new way, and this is what I love that we landed in awareness in there, because yeah, it's going to be some level of me trying to navigate that whole process is up to my discretion or intuition or feeling as well, because on some level, one could argue, especially if they're listening and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, is that, hey, like if it's okay, if I just sit back and go, okay, like, I'm just going to charge what people feel to sort of contribute to me in this moment. There's still that person that I'm in competition with that's going to outstrip me because of the way society is currently rigged. And so I think the conversation we're having here is to have more conversations like this, bring more awareness so that more and more people are having this dialogue. And it almost is being had, right? Like I'm cognizant of the fact that we're having this conversation. Do you know what I mean? And it reaches people and people there's conversation. What do you think it is about the time that we're in right now that is bringing such a conversation to the fore?
Well, generally, what opens conversation up to extend beyond the bounds of normal is when normal isn't working very well, especially if there's some kind of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So even before COVID hit, we were a society in growing crisis,
Yeah.
seeming like there's another financial crisis on the horizon. Who knows? 6 months, 2 years, who knows? In my country, especially a health crisis. I know Australia too. Like it's holding together, but it's, cracks are spreading.
Doesn't feel comfortable, does it?
In
Yeah.
the system, yeah. So as normal stops working, then ideas that had been off the table then are brought back onto the table, and people start talking about them. And now that the coronavirus has dealt such a massive blow to normalcy, all kinds of ideas are entering the public discourse. And we have a sense, like a month ago, if someone had said, okay, let's ground all commercial aircraft because of climate change or something, people would have said, that is impossible. That is preposterous. But it happened.
Yeah.
This is, it's demonstrating what humanity can do when we're united in common cause. We have unity and coherence. We can do anything. None of the world's problems are technically difficult to solve. The difficulty is purely political. It's because it's a crisis in human agreement. That's the crisis. And the political polarization that we're seeing, the disconnect between people of different viewpoints, the conflicting narratives, all that. These are all facets of the breakdown of our story, the crisis in communication, the crisis in agreement. If we can heal that, then anything is possible. And one good thing that I'm seeing coming out of the epidemic is more unity. Like, yeah, there's a lot of polarized positions out there. Some people think it's a conspiracy, checking all the boxes on the totalitarian wish list and so on. And I'm not like discounting that. I mean, there's a lot of people hating each other going on, but I'm also seeing so much compassion and solidarity and this general feeling like, wow, we're all in this together. And that is itself an awakening that doesn't depend on which side is right. Like, we are, in a sense, all in this together, all focused on the same thing. That when has that happened before?
So unprecedented. Yeah.
Yeah. So it does give us a precedent because what else can we do that we thought was impossible? Phenomenal change is possible with
Yep.
our agreement. So I think it's an initiation, actually.
Wow, what a powerful word. And so in there, like what was really present for me was when get diving into your work, it was this, like, you just call money an agreement. It's like money is just an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you're just saying. There's systemically the challenge is our political agreements, but all of a sudden confronted with crisis. And you've actually spoken about this before, which is like it takes crisis to change. And navigating that process. And now we are in the middle of a crisis, and we are changing.
Yeah, I don't usually change without a crisis. Instead, I'll be like, well, I'm going to have to change, and I keep doing the exact same thing I've always been doing. Maybe you have more willpower than I do, but that's fine.
Oh, you give me too much credit, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's profound, and I think what you're alluding to, that unity that's coming, is I was having another podcast earlier in the week, and the conversation was around this. It was like yes, there's the pandemic, and then there's the pandemic of fear that's associated with it, but there's also a pandemic of collaboration that is happening. Like a lot of the places, like one of the parts where we're phase one in Australia at the moment, and we have to cooperate to stay away from each other 2 meters wherever we go. So wherever you go, you're 2 meters away from the next person. And even though it's social distancing and it seems like it's a disconnect, but really you're really connected, because you're like, whoa, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Okay, there you are. And you're kind of like in this dance with everybody together. So this sense of collaboration and unity is present, and it's interesting to see how we're all navigating all of
Yeah. It's amazing, if you go into the kind of conspiracy world, it kind of looks like they're doing everything they can to keep us apart. Now you can't even leave your home without written permission. In a lot of places, you basically need a hall pass. You have to print out a document from a government website and have a valid reason. It's just like school, like your whereabouts must be authorized at all times. So it sure looks like they're trying to keep us apart and keep us obedient. And like you're saying, even this effort to keep us apart is generating more togetherness. It's like this unstoppable force. It's like water leaking through a cracked wall.
Yeah.
The water of togetherness, the water of love that is carrying us into the future. I think the age of love has actually started.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So inspirational. And one of the questions, and now's probably the wrong time to ask it, but I definitely want to ask it before we check out, is, I do feel that, there is a shift happening collectively. We are kind of going through a process, an awakening, perhaps. I'm being as audacious as saying that. And least of all is probably just my own, because we can choose the way we see the world, right? So I choose to see myself as the dead weight. If I'm having this conversation, then surely like other people are having this conversation. And the fact that, this conversation around, money and the story of ourselves and how we integrate all of that. I know it can be quite a, I guess, polarizing topic amongst people in terms of, what is the function of money, how we operate, how we relate to it, what is it good for, what is it, used for, what's its best use. And one of the pieces that I found really intriguing of your work was discussing the human tendency to be more polarized. Like we see more polarization amongst people that we're closer to than we do than people that are further away. I think the example you gave, and by no means is this like the hottest topic, just a really obvious one was between people that are like, say, vegan and paleo, right? And you mentioned that they both care about the environment, like they both care about the environment is one of their values.
Yeah, they both want to end industrial agriculture.
Yeah.
Right.
But then they have this challenge. Can you tell us more about that? Like, as opposed to
Yeah.
them interfacing with what the real challenge is. Why, like, what's going on in there? Why are we not banding together to form these greater levels of agreement, which, as we can see, do exist? Planes can be grounded, but in the meantime, it seems like we're factioning against everybody that's trying to come up with a solution.
Mhm.
Other solutions are rubbing against each other rather than the actual problem
Yeah.
at times.
So I think that deep at the root of the crisis of civilization is a crisis of belonging,
Mm.
where because of the dissolving of community and the sundering of connections to nature, people do not know who they are. Our identity is built from our relationships because we're not
Mm.
separate selves.
Right.
And it used to be a few generations ago that in most places on earth, you would know every single person that you saw. You would know their whole
Truly.
story. You would know their whole family story back
Mhm.
generations. And you would know every landform and the stories behind that,
Mhm.
what happened there. And you'd know the name of every tree
Mhm.
and every plant and what those plants are useful for and the habits of all the birds. Like you were connected. You were at home.
Mm.
Um, the modern economy and I mean actually science with its labeling and categorizing of everything, modern technology, it's in all of these have pushed us apart in various ways, replaced our dependencies on each other with dependencies on vast impersonal processes,
Mm.
and destroyed the stories that told us who we are and why
Yeah.
we're here.
Mhm.
So without all of those relationships and without those stories, we have a hunger to belong, a hunger to feel at home, a hunger for identity. One way to source that is through identification with an in-group, identification with an idea, a way that you can know yourself as good and right because I have the right ideas, I have the right opinions. Therefore, if somebody attacks you for your veganism or your paleo or any of your dearly held beliefs, it feels like a personal attack, even if they're just
Mm.
attacking the idea,
Yep.
because it is actually a threat to your identity. Your identity is being right, as being good, as belonging. So people, as community breaks down, people become more and more susceptible to substitutes for it, like fascism, like cults, like consumerism, anything that makes you feel connected and tells you who you are. So this problem of polarization is very deep. It also taps into the pattern of war thinking, which is that the reason for any problem is a bad guy.
Ah.
That's the basic diagnosis. The reason people are getting sick is because of a germ.
Right.
Well, why is it that almost everyone who dies from it has comorbid conditions, has like other serious pathologies?
Mm.
Are they dying really because of COVID, of the virus? Or is the virus just happened to be the proximate cause of their death,
Mm.
but it's actually showing us how sick we are?
Right.
Or is crime caused by criminals and we can solve it by locking them up?
Mm.
Or should we actually look at why there are so many criminals? Or, is terrorism caused by terrorists and we solve it by bombing them?
Mm.
If we think that, I mean, this is in the movies, the problem is always a bad guy.
Mhm.
Uh, Thanos, like if it weren't for Thanos, then everything would be fine, basically. And when you kill him, then everything is fine.
Mm.
That's the plot. And in the most recent movie, after he was killed the last time,
Mm.
they had to like basically resuscitate him in order to have a plot. And if you remember that film, what was it? Avengers Endgame, is it called?
Yep. Yep.
Like at the beginning of the movie, they kill Thanos, right?
Yep.
And then what happens to them? They like Thor sitting around getting drunk, like Iron Man becomes a suburban dad. No one knows what to do with themselves until there's a bad guy again.
Mm.
So these are deep patterns in our civilization,
Mm.
which shows that for things to fundamentally change, the change has to go all the way to the root. It has to go to the way that we relate to each other, the way that we hold ourselves, who we know ourselves to be, our theory of change, how to change the world, how problems get solved. The kill the bad guy, which is propagated by Hollywood, by the media, politics, like that is part of the problem. And a lot of the crises that we see today cannot be solved by finding a bad guy and dominating it, like autoimmunity, addiction, obesity, depression, suicide. There's no germ that you can kill to solve these problems. And so this is another aspect of the initiation. An initiation, a life initiation, puts you in a situation where none of your previous operating patterns are of any use, and you don't know what to do, and you go through this phase of letting go because nothing you were doing worked.
In the face of mass uncertainty,
yeah, and we're going through that collectively. I mean, right now with the coronavirus, we think we know what to do because here's a bad guy to control. I think that this situation is going to unfold in surprising ways. I don't know what they are. I don't know what's going to happen.
But I think that's the key of what you're sharing, right? Is that no one does, right? And that's the uncertainty and hence the initiation.
But we do have a feeling that we're at the threshold of a new world, for better or for worse.
Yeah, really powerful. And what was cognizant for me as you were sharing that, thank you, was when it goes all the way down into the root of who we are, somehow the root of who we are, because of what you're talking about, that whole villain drama scenario, is the story that we're embedded in, the story that we write, whether it's for ourselves, whether it's written for us. At its root, it seems like at its root of who we are is story. Is that correct? Is that your opinion?
Yeah, it's deep. I won't say that story is the most fundamental. Like you could say, well, if we change our story, we can change everything. That's true. But also we have to understand that that story is one aspect of an entire state of being. The stories or the beliefs that you're attracted to co-resonate with your life history, your traumas, the love that you've received, this whole mix of experiences that might even go back to childhood or prenatal or, previous lives or whatever. Like this totality of circumstances magnetizes a certain story that fits them. So the healing, and some people, they'll have like a transformative experience and their beliefs will change because who they are is different and they resonate with different beliefs. Or it could be that you change your story and then your body changes, your health changes, your relationships change. So I don't want to say that story is prior to the other things, but it is one level that we can work at. We can look at our stories, our beliefs, and we can say, maybe that used to resonate. Does it still resonate? Is that story really me anymore? Is that belief really me? This isn't about like the effort of will to change your story to one of abundance so that you'll make more money. It's to look at the story of scarcity. Look at where it hurts. What wounds that it might resonate with. What unmet needs. And then maybe to realize, I'm done with that. I'm ready to live more in abundance, to trust my impulse to give. I'm changing. So the awareness of the stories and the beliefs can be very powerful. But it's not like yet another thing that you've got to do right to become a better person.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, because that's a further disconnect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's, wow, really profound. And so in there, like you write about a new story in terms of coming to us, writing a collective new story, writing our own new stories. does it come back to, again, just being key to what you were just saying just then, which is like the awareness is intrinsically the shift. If we can just become aware of what stories we're embedded in, then we have the opportunity to make new choices.
Awareness is a step. It's
Mm.
not, I wouldn't say that you become aware and then do nothing. It's that a lot of doing comes from the awareness.
Right.
Yeah. And it's really not so much that we're writing the new story, it's that we're receiving the new story. It's already there. And we can tap into it and recognize it and take it in and watch how it transforms us and prepare to act from it. So it's not about, it's not just like awareness as separate from action.
Mm.
It's awareness and readiness to trust that the awareness is going to bring you to different action.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And so when you say the story's already there, is that it's it's already emerging and it's on us to be aware and click into it? Or what do you mean by that? The story's already there.
It's already there in potential. It's like Mozart, who is basically transcribing music that he was hearing.
Uh-huh.
Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, right.
Did he make it up? Like, where does genius come from? Where does stories come from?
Oh,
This is a mystery.
yeah. What a great mystery. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for articulating it that way. And I think one of the biggest things that is really driving home for me, and just I hope the listener as well, is this conversation around resonance. We keep using the word resonance and energy, and just like learning to like how we resonate, like what we're embedding as the story, as the identity, is then what we're emitting as almost like an antenna, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what we're resonating to, and that's probably what we're attracting in as well. That's what we're calling in. That's what we're putting out, and hence the story that we're living in. And I think that's a really potent potent awareness to have, that the word resonance, and in there just the energy that we then have, and from the story the agreements that are built upon that, and then thus our relationship with the money and how we interact with the world around us. That's been really, really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I feel like we've kind of skipped around a lot of topics in this conversation.
That's
I hope,
welcome to the Inspired Evolution.
yeah.
Some of the episodes end up being very chop suey. That's just the nature of curiosity, kind of just let the conversation go where it needs to. Is there anything that you wish to share before we tie up, Vincent?
Um, yeah, I just want to express my appreciation for your good humor, and friendliness, and like that transmits some kind of information also, that there's a truth in there. When somebody is joyful, not because they're trying to be, but because they're recognizing something about life. And I really appreciate that about you. And I'm going to be taking that with me after our talk.
Oh, touch wood, Charles. Thank you for your blessings. That's super sweet. Thank you so much. I really want to take this moment and opportunity to thank you for your kind reflection. Really means a lot. Really, really means a lot. Touch wood. And thank you so much for your time and energy here today. Just for showing up and being so graceful. And it's not lost on me just the way it was. So like a lot of these things are quite nebulous, and there's things that are not just nebulous, but also things that we avoid looking at. And I really respect and appreciate the way that you've pulled them together and actually looked at them, but then also looked at them together. That takes definitely an element of courage, and I really respect that. So thank you so much for today and all the work that went into us having this informed conversation today. As always, going to wish you the best for what's coming up, especially in these times. There's a lot happening at the moment, so I hope your loved ones are well as well. For those that want to tune in to Charles Eisenstein, the books are a great read. As you can tell, you're an eloquent speaker. Your books are really well written as well. What's the best way to get in touch and find out more?
I mean, you just go to my website, charleseisenstein dot something or other. I just put out a new essay called The Coronation about COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm yeah, pretty excited for people to read that. Um, so
Perfect. I'll add it. I'll direct people to that essay if it's on because it's online in the show notes. So we'll make that possible for people to guide their way there.
yeah, thanks, Amrit.
Of
Appreciate
course.
that.
Thank you so much for your time and energy.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Love of the Inspired Evolution and sharing the Love of the Inspired Evolution. If you feel like this content has supported you or may support anyone else that you know may resonate with the content of it, please share away and share the love around. Thank you guys so much. And to stay up to date on whatever's coming out with the Inspired Evolution, please subscribe. There's all these links in the bio for you to tune into the episodes and all these different platforms, just so the message can get to you and your loved ones. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Stay inspired to evolve.